Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
But David, I'm watching these athletes just compete in just the most competitive way. But it really opened my eyes to the Paralympic community, and that these athletes were no different than any other athlete that we would watch compete. There's no difference.
That's our guest this week, Kyle Malone. Kyle works in the field of education and has two children, Zion, 12, and Noah, 19, who's blind. We'll hear about the Malone family, including how Noah has overcome his inability to see and is participating in track at Indiana State University and the Paralympics. It's a great story, and you'll hear it on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's hear this fascinating conversation between Kyle Malone and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Kyle Malone of Indianapolis, Indiana, who's a father of two and a senior manager of partnerships at Grantmakers for Education. Kyle, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
David, thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to be here.
You and your former wife, Tasha, are the proud parents of two children, daughter Zion, who's 12, and son Noah, who's 19 and also blind. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
Yes, well, born in Chicago, and at the age of 3, my mother, father, and I moved to Gary, Indiana, where my father assumed church, United Methodist Church in Gary. Grew up in Gary until I came to Indianapolis for college, where I attended, at that time, Indiana Central University, which is now the University of Indianapolis. So it's great growing up in the region, and that's home and where the heart is. So that was my beginning.
Excellent. Well, one of the things I remember in a prior conversation is, coincidentally, our moms were about the same age, and they had careers, like 30-plus year careers as Chicago public school teachers.
Oh, my goodness. Well, as I mentioned, living in Gary, I really developed admiration for my mother, who drove from Gary to Chicago every day. And that was about, 40-minute drive each way. But the main thing was she would drive during the winter. And there were several years where she did not miss a day of school. So, I really grew up admiring her hard work ethic. Certainly both my mother and my father's occupations shaped who I am today.
So you mentioned your dad was a United Methodist minister in Gary. And I'm wondering, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I am basically his twin in terms of disposition. He was somewhat laid back, very people oriented, very giving. And in terms of, going to work with my mother, the equivalent with my father was after service. He would stand at the back of the church and greet people coming out. And I just took it upon myself to stand next to him. And I would greet people, but I'm mainly watching him, and I don't know why I did that. It wasn't necessarily, I have to, protect him, but I just felt that was my place to be. And then he would maybe give me his robe to hold the robe and everything. So I was just very active, in the things that he did. But as I think more about that, David, I would also accompany him when he would visit church members. We would take individuals who did not have transportation, but they had family members who might have been hospitalized or institutionalized. And I remember going along with him on those visits. And so now with my children, I'm trying to impart the idea of going and visiting people. And I didn't realize how important those moments were when I was growing up. I was there, but it just gives us the patience now to talk and listen and visit. That was very instrumental to me to accompany my father on some of those trips.
Excellent. So I'm wondering if there's a lesson or two that come to mind when you think about your dad, something that maybe you've tried to emulate or incorporate into your own fathering.
Oh, definitely. I think it's being, so I have a plaque on my wall here that was made about him when they dedicated a chapel to him at Methodist Hospital in Gary after he passed in 2006. And we never termed him in this way, but there's a term that they put on this plaque called gentle giant. Gentle giant. And there's a lot in that term, right? And so I think that I emulate that personality where I do not parent with a heavy hand, nor do I have to. I feel blessed, with my children. So I take on the same parenting style, maybe walk softly and carry a big stick. There is discipline, there is order, but there is also kindness. There's also a listening ear, and there's also an external part where we're connected to a larger world. We're connected to people outside of our immediate unit. So I think those are the things that I take away from my own upbringing, and certainly want to give to my children. Going back to my father, he was African-American minister in predominantly white district in northern Indiana, the Calumet district. And so there were only 4 African-American churches in the district, and they were all in Gary, okay? He later became the first African-American district superintendent for the Calumet district. And so when we would travel to other churches, we were traveling to white communities. I remember as a child, close family friends, I remember their names, the Perlmans, and they would come over to have dinner, and, we would go to their home. So I think that that's the test, in terms of cross-cultural understanding. If you're able to visit in homes of people who are from different backgrounds, or if they are in your home, I think that's a really good signal that you're learning and you're exchanging.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the problems that we are experiencing or witnessing in our society today, domestically and internationally, have to do with the fact that people don't interact with one another. And, it's really hard to get to know somebody if you're not spending time with them face-to-face or one-on-one. So I love it that you were learning that from an early age, and that you're trying to do the same, with your kids as well. And, the world would be obviously a lot better place if everybody was of similar mind. So thanks for sharing. From what I remember, you went to Indiana Central University, which is now University of Indianapolis, and you took a poli-sci degree, and you've served in a lot of different positions. You were Dean of Admissions at Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. You were Associate Director of Admissions at Kalamazoo College. You were vice president of programs with Big Brothers Big Sisters in Indianapolis. And then currently, you're the senior manager of partnership grant makers for education. And you've been there for a handful of years.
Yes.
What is it that you do now occupationally?
So I work with education foundations, and these are foundations that invest in the all aspects of the education continuum from birth through career. I work in the area of membership retention, membership recruitment, as well as membership engagement. So that keeps us busy. There's no shortage of issues. No day is the same, but it's definitely a feeling of making a difference.
Well, thanks for sharing. And it just dawned on me that instead of following in your dad's footsteps, administering, it's obvious or evident that you've fallen a little bit closer to following in your mom's footsteps with her commitment to education and your role in helping educators. So that's fabulous.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. I will add, David, that anyone who is a son or daughter of a minister, you're automatically dubbed as, well, you're going to be a minister one day. And I would be kidding you if I said that there wasn't pressure. Okay. And so as I began to work in education, particularly as I started at Earlham College and I was at Kalamazoo College, in my mind, I looked at that as a ministry. I said, okay, this is my ministry because, what you're doing is you're guiding people, in this case, young people. You're listening, you're helping. And so there's a form of ministry. And I think with all of the work that we do, that you do, and our listeners, I think we can make the argument that we are doing a form of ministry. So hopefully I'm combining, the two, but I've definitely, the education has certainly been my calling, youth development, and as well as education philanthropy. So I hadn't really thought about that. So yeah, so I think a combination. So yeah, I love that.
That's fabulous. So you and Tasha were married for about 14 years and divorced in 2014. And you are the proud parents of these two children. And I'd like to switch gears and talk about special needs, first on a personal level and then perhaps beyond. So I'm sort of curious to know, before Noah's diagnosis, did you or Tasha have any experience with the special needs community?
No, we did not. We did not. And we did not anticipate having any connections to the special needs community.
So what is Noah's diagnosis and how did it come about?
Noah's diagnosis is a vision impairment called Leber's, and Leber's is Lebers, Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. It is a condition where the nerves that are connected to the eyeballs are not firing. And so this condition came about quite suddenly, I would say over a matter of days. There was no warning. In fact, when we would take him for, eye tests and vision tests, it was 2020. So there was absolutely no hint that this would happen. But sort of the evolution of it came, we were in Jacksonville, Florida, at a track meet. We were in the stands, and he had trouble seeing the displays and some of the scoreboards down on the field. But I tell you, David, it was so hot in Jacksonville that you could attribute anything that you were feeling to the heat. So there was no red flag, okay? Like, oh yeah, we're sitting upstairs, we're just sweating. We come back. Noah begins school days later, first day of school, and he comes home and says, I had trouble seeing the board today. Okay, again, not a red flag. It's like, well, let's go to Target and get tested and see if we can get some glasses. And so when we arrived at Target about 6 p.m. that day, the doctor was conducting, standard routine tests. She immediately noticed that something was wrong. And the way she described it to us, you could tell it was heightened. Her concern was heightened. In fact, she said if it wasn't so late in the day, she would have sent us to an optic neurologist that day. Tasha's brother also has a vision impairment. And at that time, we didn't know the technical names. We didn't know all of the details. But Tasha sort of connected dots that evening to say, I wonder if this is what my brother's condition is. And she made a call to get more information that evening. And so that next day, when we went to the Glick Eye Center in downtown Indianapolis, that diagnosis was confirmed, that it was Leber's. And so you can imagine we were all just blown away for different reasons. Obviously, Noah's blown away because this is affecting him directly.
And he's only 13 years old, right?
He's only 13.
Starting eighth grade, right? Yeah.
Right. So you can imagine the adjustment that we made. There was an academic adjustment. There's a social adjustment. And then when you look at extracurricular, right, there's an extracurricular adjustment. And there's no time to prepare. It's not like school starting in 2 months. So we didn't have the luxury of time. What we realized is that we had to kick into gear really, really quickly, meaning let's meet with the teachers, because this was new for everybody, right? And share the knowledge and information that we had with his teachers as to, trying to put ourselves in his shoes the best we could. We were able then to get assignments onto his iPad. And fortunately, the real blessing here is that our school district here in Fishers, Indiana, has an office for blind and low vision students. And that year, the office was located in his junior high school. I kid you not. And the individuals, Angela and Bev, we couldn't have done it without them. They were right there and just served as an incredible support. And then just to show how incredible this journey has been, the next year, the office moved from the junior high school to the high school that Noah's. I kid you not.
It's divine providence. Yeah.
Yes. So it was just a blessing that this level of support was right there. And then there was the adjustment with track, of course, because he had been running since 5th grade formally. And it was something he was still committed to doing. During that 8th grade year, there were definitely some bumps along the way, right? Because there's an adjustment with the loss of sight. And there were a couple of occasions where he stepped on blocks, starting blocks that were left on the track. So if you're running a 400, they leave the blocks at the end of the track. And so I think this race was either a 200 or 100, and I could see the block. I knew the blocks were there, and I'm like, and I could see Noah heading straight to them. I'm like, oh Lord, I hope Noah doesn't step on those blocks. And he did, and twisted his ankle. And so there were a few situations like that. And what happened there, to be candid, it created a mental block for Noah, because he's like, okay, most of my vision is gone. I can't see what's on the track. How will I know? How will I be guaranteed that this track is clear, right? We worked with the USA Track and Field Association because, for some of the qualifying meets or some of the championship meets, only the athletes can be on the track. No coaches, no parents. So we were able to meet with them to say, look, we have a special situation here. Can a coach and parent be on the track? So they allowed that. So we said, Noah, we'll be your eyes, right? We'll make sure the track is clear. That's our job. Your job is to run like heck. Right? And we had a deal. And so, one of us as parents, we would be at the far end of the track. Here's the finish line. And so we would be well behind the finish line. There would be a coach standing on the infield. And no, you just run. We'll make sure there are no blocks on that track. And so that was I would say a mental block that he overcame. And then the second level of support that I want to talk about is from the coaches, because Noah ran on the 4x1 relay team and he was the anchor. So he didn't have to worry about handing a baton to anyone, right? All he had to do was put his hand back and receive it. The plan was for a coach to provide audible instructions, whether it was standing right there on the infield, or there were times when, like in the state championship meets, they would have to be behind the fence. So there were these audibles. But, one of the things that I just want to point out is just, again, the incredible support that we received from just so many places, so many people, that this is so big. When this happens to you as a parent, your mind can't think of the magnitude and all of the strategies and all of the resources. We had people coming to us, describing those resources, sharing those resources, pointing us in the right direction. So we're indebted to our extended family, our extended community, coaches, teachers who guided us to the Paralympics. We really didn't know much about the Paralympics, but Noah's journey after 8th grade took him to 2 high schools. He was dual enrolled at the Indiana School for the Blind, which again, we were blessed to be 25 minutes away from that incredible institution and that incredible resource. But he wanted to continue track. He was totally committed to running track at Hamilton Southeastern High School. And we met with the athletic director there. The athletic director advocated for Noah to the Indiana High School State Association Commissioner, Mr. Bobby Cox. And we created a plan where Noah could go to Indiana School for the Blind, middle of the day, lunch, take a bus over to HSE. That was his freshman year, sophomore year, and junior year. And then his senior year, he went full time to Hamilton Southeastern High School. I will note, and as a dad, I will brag, that when he arrived at Hamilton Southeastern in his 9th grade year, he broke 3 records. We had no idea what high school track would be like. We knew it would be a step up From junior high, we felt like, okay, you're getting to the major leagues now. Okay. I did not expect, for him to have that kind of success as his freshman year. And then sophomore year, he broke his own records in the 100 and the 200. And then he has the indoor 60 meter record. And then they had success as a relay team with Noah anchoring. So I'll pause there, but I just wanted to kind of share the journey from 8th grade, when everything hit suddenly, to sort of that transition then to high school and how that, began.
Well, thanks for sharing. It sounds like it was quite a chaotic year, right? Learning about the diagnosis.
Yes, sir.
And trying to keep some semblance of order on Noah's behalf, educationally, like you said, socially, and then with his extracurriculars, with his running. And I did see a video of that anchor leg where he started out like in 4th out of the 8 runners, as far as getting the baton to do the anchor leg. And he just like motored ahead. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like everybody else was slowing down or something, and here he is powering across the finish line. It was really inspirational. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Kyle Malone. I'm 16 years old, and I run for Indiana Storm. I've been running track since the 4th grade, so about 6 years. My PRs would be a 10.6 and a 21.4.
Clyde King Jr., Edner Dorwell, Noah Malone, Abimbola Kalawoli, Devion Chisholm.
At the beginning of each year, whatever classes Noah would take at the high school, we would do a walking tour. But it was Noah and his sister Zion who would walk the halls and find the classrooms and go up the stairs. And then after 2 or 3 times, he would be like, okay, I'm going to do this by myself now. Let me do it by myself. And once he did that, once he had it, that was it. So, being very intentional in terms of let's take a couple of days, walk through, and then your first day of school, right? So just allowing that time, being patient to let him walk as much as he needs to walk until he's feeling comfortable. And so I would say that was probably one of the biggest challenges, just keeping him on track, but pushing him out a little bit without pushing too hard or putting him in a situation where he wasn't going to be successful.
You mentioned his sister Zion, and there's a 7-year difference in age. And I'm wondering what impact Noah's situations had on his younger sister Zion, your marriage, or the rest of your family, for that matter.
You know what? I would start off by saying that we rallied. We all rallied, the immediate family as well as our extended family. And, we had one goal in mind, and that was to, identify resources and provide the support, that would keep him on track. I would say Zion in particular, she's, totally awesome and extremely mature for being 12. And I think part of her maturity is the time that she has spent with Noah, and they are extremely close. They're extremely close. And she plays an important role. I'm going to say is equal as his parents, but probably in some ways even more important than the parents. So she's like his advisor, and he relies on her. And so they have a special relationship, but it's a relationship built on trust.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. It sounds like she's very mature for a 12-year-old.
That's right. And I have to say, from a personal perspective, my life was really impacted at the first Paralympic track meet I attended in Phoenix, Arizona, the Desert Challenge. And we had to go there for Noah to qualify to be on the team. You know, we went out there. Good news is that he did achieve the time and qualified for the Paralympic team at that meet. But David, I'm watching these athletes just compete in just the most competitive way. But it really opened my eyes to the Paralympic community, and that these athletes were no different than any other athlete that we would watch compete. There's no difference. And so now I'm happy to say that he just completed his first semester of college at Indiana State University. Mm-hmm. And so I was a nervous wreck first 3 weeks. I was a nervous wreck. I'm like, Lord Jesus. And I think I had a breakthrough 3 weeks into the semester when he called me and he said, hey, I went and got a haircut today. I found a barber shop. And I walked by myself. And so that was a breakthrough. I was like, wow, okay. I couldn't believe it. You know, I mean, I was in my mind, I was saying, whoa, but you know, I said, oh, wow, Noah, that's really great. And then just recently in December, maybe Thanksgiving, I picked him up and we're driving through town. He said, can we go get some Chinese food? I know this great restaurant. And so we're driving through town. He says, oh, there's a donut shop over here, you know, and he's pointing all these things out. And I'm like, how do you know these places, you know, in Terre Haute, Indiana? And so that let me know he had been getting out. I asked him, well, who do you go with? How do you get there? So to see him adapt, not only to college academically, but then to adapt to that surrounding community has been really pivotal. And I think he's like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. Right. And that's just who he is. I mean, that's who he has been. Like you were saying earlier, like, no, I don't need a cane. Right. You know, I'll do this on my own. And he's determined in that way. And so you just let him go. And I think that's the lesson for young people at some point. There's only so much coddling we can do. And we're the nervous ones as parents, right? we're messed up. But they're like, let me try it. Let me do it. I think I got this, Dad. He's competing now in track. He's doing well there. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, we can travel to the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. But that's a goal.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. That's fabulous. And I'm thinking way beyond, because Noah is so young that it's not inconceivable that, what is that, 7, 8, 9 years down the road, that he might still be competing, providing that, like you said, he can stay injury free, and that's something that might be of importance to him. Then that's a long time away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know it's in his line of sight, so we've got some things to look forward to.
That's fabulous. Thanks for sharing. Let's give a special shout out to our mutual friend, Jim McHale, who is the CEO and president of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation, for helping connect us.
I love that. Yes. Thank you, Jim.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I would just like to say thank you. It's certainly a pleasure being connected to you. Just in the short time we've known each other, I have grown and look forward to our friendship continuing and growing as well. So this has been an awesome experience, and it's just the beginning.
If somebody wants to learn more about Liebers, the Indiana School for the Blind, Paralympics, or to contact you, how would they do that?
You know, let me give my email if that's okay. Anyone can contact me at K.Malone, Malone, at me.com.
Okay. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes, so it'll make it as easy as possible.
Great. Thank you.
Kyle, thank you for the time and many insights. As a reminder, Kyle is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stCenturyDads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Kyle, thanks again.
Thank you, David.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stCenturyDads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stCenturyDads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.